Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of the Energy Tech Podcast. Today's guest is my friend Jim Saunders. Thanks for joining us, and I think you're really going to like it. Here we go. Hey, Jim, good to see you. As a way of getting started, you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where
Excellent.
you came from, what you're doing now.
Hey, thanks for having me on. So I grew up in Boston and I wanted to be a veterinarian. Kind of a funny story, but I wanted to be a veterinarian and I got a job at 12 working in a dog kennel that was in my neighborhood. And they paid me $1 a day, 5 days a week to clean up dog crap. And then on Saturday, I got $10, but I had to clean the whole kennel. And so I took that and I started work. I went to an agricultural high school in Boston for like animal husbandry or something. I forget what
Oh, okay.
the exact name of the program was. So I want to be a veterinarian. So, and then I started working on a farm at like age 15. And then at the farm, it was a sheep farm south of Boston. The guy who owned the farm would like get into a pickup truck every day in a suit and drive into Boston. I don't know what he did, right? But he owned a farm and like he liked having the farm, and I just did all the odd jobs around the farm. But this guy would like bang nails straight and all sorts of stuff, only to find out later that he started the first consulting firm in the entire country. Like they have all these consulting firms today. He started the first one in like 1947 with
Wow.
him with a bunch of Harvard grads. And so they were running around the world consulting with like Volvo and General Motors and all these people. And then he'd come back and, work on the farm with me and give me advice and
That's pretty
which
cool.
was interesting. So then I turned 16 and my dad's like, well, we need to get a car. So you get a learner's permit at 16. And my dad was kind of having like the midlife crisis. He just bought the Thunderbird, like the late 80s Thunderbird with the
Yeah.
5 liter Mustang drivetrain in it,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I wrecked first day of my learner's permit. He threw me behind the wheel because we weren't going to take my mother's Bonneville out. We were going to
Yeah.
take this thing out. Yeah, and I ripped the door off it. Um, that's its own story. But I ripped the door off. And then a couple weeks after my 16th birthday, my dad came home and he's like, oh, there's this muscle car on the side of the road for sale, which might as well have been Greek, like what he was saying to me. My dad wasn't mechanically inclined. We never talked about any of that stuff. I played on my Commodore 64. So, anyways, we went over to look at this 70 Chevelle that was on the side of the road. So it would have just been a 20-year-old car, 19-year-old car, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
and so we looked at it, it had a chain steering wheel, it had like a
Oh,
chain
yeah.
shifter, like
Yeah.
all the stuff. It had like the Bigfoot pedal, all that. And so, anyways, we looked at it briefly, and then the next day it was gone. Like it was gone from the car lot, but they had a 67 Chevelle in the back. And so my dad was firing it up. It ran like crap. And everybody was looking as my dad was like, room, 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 right? And me, I was like, wow, like everybody's looking at this car, right? And it was whatever would have been a 21-year-old heap of
Yeah.
garbage, right? And so we limped the thing home to my mother's total disgust. Like the thing pulled in the driveway, and my dad's like, well, it's like 6 months from now before we actually have to be driving it. And he had that dream. My dad was not mechanically inclined, and his son, who had never touched a wrench, that we were gonna like get this car running. So we spent the next few months like figuring it out, pre-YouTube, all that.
Oh, yeah.
My
That
dad took
Haynes
the car.
manuals and yeah.
Yeah, my dad took the carburetor somewhere and like had it rebuilt, and yeah, we had the books and everything.
Yeah, and in those days too, so I was going to car cruises all the time. And it was the car culture at that time was very different. It was definitely a built, not bought car culture.
Yes.
So you could go to these Sunday evening car cruises and check out a guy's car. Man, it was just this wealth of information that these guys they pour out and share, not just what they paid for something, but they had their blood, sweat, and tears were in those cars. And so that's how, you know, guys of our generation, we learned, right, from the old time.
Absolutely. Well, not only that, we have some like 19 and 20-year-old cars in my driveway. Like we have like a 98 Lexus sitting out here, and we have like a 2007 Impala, right? They're in great
Yeah.
shape.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like the kids drive them. They love them. They're in their
Right.
20s. Whereas these cars at 19, 20 years old, garbage. I mean, just
Totally.
totally,
Yeah. I mean,
totally
I
garbage,
remember
right?
when I got into cars and motorcycles in the mid 80s and where I grew up, kind of the beginning of the suburbs of Pittsburgh, we had like a real main street. And yeah, it was nothing to see, GTOs and Chevelles and 442s running around. And then you could buy them for $1,500 back
Yeah,
then because they
a
were just
buddy of
cars that
mine in
people drove.
1990 bought a Super Bee for $200.
Right. Yeah.
$200, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. And then the guy kept one of the emblems, and I remember he was so mad because the seller kept the emblem off the back of the bee, right? And he was just so mad. But so anyways, we got this car home, and then I just decided, well, now I don't want to be a veterinarian. I want to be like a mechanic, right? And my family had been Teamsters forever.
Hmm.
Okay, like my dad would tell the story about my grandfather saying trucks were a fad because they had the horses and buggies, right?
Yeah.
And they had been Teamsters forever, forever, 1,000 years or whatever, right?
Right.
Of Irish history. So I wasn't allowed to do that. My dad's like, I don't care what you do, but you can't get a CDL. Like, we're
Yeah.
going to break this chain. And so I switched at the agricultural school over to, they had an ag mechanics program. So I switched over to the ag mechanic program and then started learning about that. So while trying to keep this car together, that was again just a heap. So my guidance counselor, you don't hear that too often these days, but my
Yeah.
high school guidance counselor gave me a chart that said what paid the most for being a mechanic, and it was aircraft mechanic. So at 18, I went to school to be an aircraft mechanic, and I stashed this Chevelle at my grandfather's house. My grandfather also had a bunch of old cars, and I just kind of stashed it behind his garage, like it just was out in
Hmm.
the right. My parents were beside themselves. I didn't get rid of the car because it was worth something, but it probably wasn't worth anything. And I went to school to be an aircraft mechanic, and then when I graduated, the wages were so low for the people hiring. Like NASA was there, and NASA was like $2 less an hour than working at the McDonald's around the corner, right? And so I would have to move from Boston to, Florida, work for
Yeah.
NASA for $2 less than McDonald's. And all the aircraft jobs were in places nobody'd want to live. In my brain, no one would want to live in like Atlanta and Houston and Tulsa. Who would want to live in any of these
Yeah.
places? Right. And so at 20 years of age, so I got a job with the local cat dealer and I started as a mechanic there, working in the union. I did that for a few years. The term today, if somebody said something wasn't a cultural fit, like everybody would get it. But in the 90s, like there wasn't even a word, right? And I just
Not
wasn't,
at all.
it wasn't a cultural fit.
Yeah.
The union would have you do just crazy stuff. I wasn't a fit with the union culture. I remember there was a wheel loader, massive thing. You had to pull the cab off and pull the transmission out, change some clutch plates. It was a recall. So the service manager's like, "Hey, we got like 100 of these to do. Do you want to do them?" So I said, "Yeah, okay." So I did the first one, took like 55 hours to do it. And then the service manager, somewhere along the way, said, "Hey, this is like 40 hours Cat's going to pay us. So if you could try to get it done in 40 hours, that would be great." Right. But I got it down to like 32 hours. Okay. And I mean, I just had a radio going, I was working, and then the union guy come up to me, the steward, and he's like, "Hey, you can't, you got to be taking 40 hours. Company's getting paid 40 hours to do these." I'm like, "Oh, I'm not killing myself at all.
Yeah.
Trust me. I got the radio going and I'm just kind of working." Right. And they made some of my parts disappear one night.
Mm.
And so then I looked like an idiot. I had, oh, I lost the parts to the transmission. So I just didn't fit with the culture. They had a sales job open up, and I ended up taking this sales job to do service contracts around generator sets. And there was nobody in the nation that had like a real program. So Caterpillar was sponsoring us to develop a program to do service contracts. So I ended up learning some sales there. Caterpillar is a great place for training. And we created a service contract program all around that. On a different note, all this time. So now I'm like in my mid 20s and I don't like living in New England. So I'm living in New England and I just don't like the weather. The whole family's there, but I hate the weather. I hate the
Yeah.
winter and just like 4 good months of decent weather and I just don't like it. So one afternoon on a Thursday in February, I got a call from a headhunter. She's like, "What do you think about going to work for Deutz in Atlanta doing product support?" So I had worked on a Deutz engine
So
once,
how old are you when that call came?
25, 26,
Okay. Yeah.
married, got a house, everything, right? And so I said, "Okay." And she's like, "Okay, we'll be at their office tomorrow at 10 a.m." So it's Thursday afternoon, no internet, right? I mean, this is like, it was 1999. So no internet. I don't even know how I got the directions to get there. I must have like bought a book or bought a
I think
map or
about that
something.
all the time. I mean, how I always had an atlas and whatever if I was going to be on the road, how the night before I'm figuring out a route and it's just, yeah, it's funny to
And I
think about.
don't, but I wouldn't have had an atlas for Atlanta.
Yeah, right.
Don't know how I got there, right? So, but anyways, I think that was part of the test, right? Will this kid get here at 10 a.m.? So then I fly down there and it's like crazy snowy morning in Boston driving to the airport. You know, that whole culture where it's just crap weather, wintertime,
Yep.
dark. Hit the ground in Atlanta, it's like 65 degrees, like the flowers are coming up. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take this job. Like I didn't even get to the place yet, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this job. And so I get there to Deutz and they're like, what do you want to do for a living? And I said, well, I really want to do product support around large gas engines. They're like, oh, that's this job. Totally. Right. And then anything I said, they were like, yep, yep, that's this job. That's this job. So they make me a job offer, a lot more money than I'm making, offer me 10% more after 60 days, yada, yada, yada. So I take the job on the spot. I'm married at the time. And I don't, my wife's not even in the loop. She just knows I went to Atlanta, right? So then I get home Friday night. I'm like, hey, I took this job in Atlanta. And she's like, what do you mean? Because her family's all in New England too. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it pays what both of our jobs pay. So we're going to go to Atlanta, right? So she's like, okay. So on Saturday, we list our house for sale and we sell it. Like that day, somebody shows up, we get under contract. I haven't given notice to Cat yet.
Yeah.
So then I give notice to Cat on Monday, and they're like, we could just match the salary from Deutz, right? And I said, no, no, I'm gonna go to Deutz. So I go to Deutz in Atlanta, and they give me an intensive amount of engine training, which was great. But the job wasn't what they said it was going to be. The job was like all little diesel, like help this guy adjust his clutch,
Hmm.
or yeah, they put an 800 number on the side of the engine, 800-241-9886. It's still there today. And they handed me the phone.
Oh,
And they
wow.
ship 5,000 engines a month with this phone number on the side. And you would end up troubleshooting and all that. So I made it about a year there. And then Waukesha Engine called and I went for an interview with them.
How did Waukesha find you?
They used a headhunter as well.
Okay.
And this would have been like pre-LinkedIn, all this
Right.
stuff, right? I mean, so it would have been paper resume, the whole nine
Sure.
yards. So I flew to Wisconsin. It was funny because my first wife, she was like, "Why are you flying up there? There's no way you're taking a job in Wisconsin," right? Because of the fact that I don't like
The
the
weather.
cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, "There's no way. This is just a colossal waste of your time and their time." So I flew up there and we talked, and they wanted someone to run aftermarket sales for them, which was basically how do you sell factory OEM parts?
Yeah.
These customers that buy knockoffs. And I had the right mix of background as far as they were concerned. So they called about a month later, like, we want to offer you a job. I said, okay, I'm interested. And they walked through the pay and everything. And then the guy's like, hey, so we have 4 places you could office out of. I said, okay. They said, Waukesha, Wisconsin, Denver, somewhere else, and our Gulf Coast office. So I said, I'll take the Gulf Coast office. Guy's like, okay. So then he talks for like 10 more minutes. And then he's like, okay, so you're good with our Gulf Coast office. Yep, absolutely. He's like,
Yeah,
it's
that
funny.
makes sense because
Yeah,
there's so many. It seems like there's lots of Waukesha's on offshore
offshore,
platform.
right. Well, what's funny is the guy's like, you have not once asked where our Gulf Coast office is.
Yeah,
And I'm like, oh, is it like Mississippi or something? And he's like, no, it's in Houston. And I'm like, okay, that sounds good. He's like, you ever been to Houston? I'm like, nope. Right. And so I take the job. I end up buying a house in Cut and Shoot, Texas, because when I saw entering Cut and Shoot, Texas, which is north of Houston, population 800, I'm like, ah, gotta do it. Gotta do it.
yeah,
Right. And so I moved to Cut and Shoot. I have this 67 Chevelle still, dragging this thing all over the country, by the way, like the thing sitting in the garage and put it in the moving truck, take it to
right.
Texas,
That's
and
cool.
yeah, just craziness. So I work for them doing aftermarket sales, go all over North and South America. Spent time in Venezuela, which is interesting with the recent news. And
So that's the dresser ownership of Waukesha
yes,
era. Okay,
the day I started was the day Halliburton said they were going to spin off Dresser because
okay,
Halliburton had bought Dresser to get Brown and Root or Kellogg Brown and Root. They
yeah,
owned a piece of it. Halliburton
right.
owned one of those names,
They
and they
wanted one
bought
of the
Dresser
big
to get.
EPC firms. Yeah,
Yes, they got, and then the manufacturing side of it, they spun off to First Reserve or something.
yeah,
Private equity firm owned
right.
us, and then we would flip private equity firms every 18 months or something, and we get new managers, and that was its own rodeo. Um, Somewhere along the line, Waukesha came to me and said, "Hey, we need you to be um, engine sales." So I said, "Okay." That we want to tone back on the aftermarket because it's getting too big for us, but we'd like you to do oil and gas engine sales. Okay. So then I said, what training will I get on this? And they said, and I quote, you will figure it out. So I flew up to the factory to try to get some sort of training. There was no training. There was just some other sales guys, like Ed Porras, that I could draft with. So I ended up, while I was the aftermarket guy, I ended up getting certified to do all the mechanical work at Waukesha. They have great training. So I became like a factory certified mechanic because that was
Yeah,
my mentality.
right.
So then when I started selling the engines, I quickly learned that if the startups didn't go well, I couldn't sell another engine.
There you go.
So then I started doing the startups, which drove my boss nuts. He's like, we have startup teams. He's like, you're the engine sales guy. I'm like, no, 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 I'm going to do the startups. So I ended up all over the place doing startups. And there was people, mechanics and trucks, and there were people that came out, right? I was just kind of there, like
Right,
making
yeah,
sure the startup went well and making a lot of noise if the startup didn't go
yeah.
well.
But I
So,
think that's really important. This sticks with me all the time. A boss I had very early in my career, he said, "Mark, you need to have not just support at the top, but at the bottom. You need to the top pulling you up and the bottom pushing you up. And because as we all well know, if the boots on the ground are left out of the input to the decision making process, there's some really strange stuff that happens to equipment that they get that they
yes,
didn't have a voice in the selection process. So yeah, that's the thing that gets missed by a lot of I'll say the pure financial type business folks that you are you being there at that startup, you are selling the next engine it's just a different way that you're not whining and dining and PowerPointing, but you're selling an engine.
correct. And you would know if there was an issue before the customer who
Yep.
bought it, the decision maker would know there was an issue because he wouldn't go to the startup, right? Because it would be some purchasing guy from a pipeline company,
Yep.
or so they wouldn't know you were already there. And then when you got the call, if there was an issue, you'd be like, "Yeah, I've been out here for 2 days. I get it. This is what we're doing." And for the most part, there wasn't issues. We're just trying to get it straight. So then there was a crazy commission deal that Waukesha offered in like 2006. And if you checked all these boxes, you could get like a exponential commission payment, really big commission payment. So I checked all the boxes, and then it was like November of that year. I went and met with the leadership team. I was like, hey, I've checked all these boxes, and it's a big check. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. We got you. We got you covered. So then in January, 3 months later, they're like, yeah, there's no way we could cut you that check, right? And so paid me like 2x what my normal commission should have been, and it should have been like 10x,
Wow.
right? Huge money, huge money. So we came to terms because I loved this job. This job was like amazing to me, right? I
Yeah.
was selling engines, talking engines, doing startups, traveling the world. I mean, like this was like the job I was built to do. So I worked something out with them that a year later they reneged on because it was like a slow play deal. And so they reneged on some of it a year later. And in their defense, we had been sold and there was like new leadership team because we kept doing these flips in private equity. Well, somewhere along the line, Frank Murphy started calling and he started poking at me. And I'd met with Terry Baldwin and some of these other people in Tulsa, names in the industry here. And I'd met with them a few times, but I couldn't get my head around actually going to work for these guys because I was selling $1 million engines and they were selling $100 widgets. And how
Yeah.
could they possibly take care of me like the guy who does $1 million engines, right? And then there was a blow up at a sales meeting at Waukesha over this commission deal. Like this has been going on a while. There was a blow up, and the guy's like, "Hey, you're just gonna have to live with it." And as I was walking out of his door, somebody from FW Murphy called and said, "Hey, what the heck do we need to do something?" And it was like we just worked it out in the hallway. They faxed me an offer. I mean, it's funny because we had email at the time, but they faxed me an
Yeah.
offer to the hotel I was staying at. I signed the offer and I faxed it back. And then they were like, okay, just come here tomorrow. And I was like, no, 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 I got a couple weeks notice to give at Waukesha. And so I went to work for Murphy doing off-highway control systems, in which they didn't have an off-highway group. They'd been looking for an off-highway leader. And so I'd come full circle to the construction equipment
Right.
they had worked on. And come to find out, they didn't have a product really. They wanted to do color displays like the My Ford Touch system at the time. They wanted to put that into tractors. That was the vision. And they
Okay.
developed a initial display that I called the go, no go gauge. So mechanical people would know a go, no go gauge. But you would pull this silly thing out and people would be like, you just put the thing away, right? So I showed it to like, I don't know, 50 to 100 customers in 9 months, 8 months, whatever.
So that role, was that OEM focused?
OEM focused. You would
Okay.
sell to Caterpillar, John Deere, like
Yeah.
these type of people that were just starting to think about putting color displays in their machines.
Okay.
I don't know where the vision came from at Murphy, but it was a brilliant vision. So, anyways, they had this display, and after a few months, I told them that it was not a sellable product. So here I am working for them. They've hired me to do this, and it's just not a sellable product. People don't want it. And the product had issues too. It had a massive fallout rate on the assembly line. So it wasn't a product they could build either. But I had gathered up like 100 pages of voice of the customer. And so they were like, okay, we'll make this thing you want to make. And you can sell that to the market. And then everybody got up and left the meeting. And so I wandered down to Frank's office. Frank at the time, 38, 40.
Okay.
How long is it going to take to make this display? It's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, what's your best guess? Oh, 18 months. Okay, what am I supposed to do for the next 18 months? He's like, oh, I don't know. And then the next day I was like, hey, let's make you director of oil and gas sales at Murphy. Of course, Murphy's known for oil and gas
Right.
sales.
Yeah.
Now it's like back on Waukesha's and all that. So that went on for like 9 months to a year. And then all of a sudden we had a strategy meeting about like where was the company going to go? We were pulling e-controls in and just had a bunch of stuff, and there was a determination in that meeting to kill the industrial stuff, like the diesel part of Murphy. Because being strategic, you have to choose what not to do, not
Yeah,
do
exactly.
everything, right? And so there was a determination to kill this industrial business, and they were going to focus on marine and off-highway, oil and gas, and fuel systems. So towards the tail end of the meeting, I'm like, hey, can I have the industrial group? And the leadership team's like, the one that we're killing? Like, yeah, can I have that? And they're like, it doesn't make any money, hasn't made money in years. We're going to close it. Like, you were sat in the meeting. I said, well, just give me a chance, right? So they gave me the business. It was probably 10 million bucks, something like that, and hadn't made money in a few years.
Yeah.
So we got it the next year or so, it grew whatever it grew, and then it was break even. But then it was like off to the races. We eventually got it up to like 60, 70 million dollars. And I'm talking eventually like 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
60, 70 million dollars. We rolled this off-highway thing back into it, and then it was like 20% on the bottom line. And there was all sorts of discussion about what to do with Murphy. We were going to take it public, or there was private equity firms that would sniff around, all that. And Sun Hydraulics called one day and said, "Hey, we want to buy this industrial business," and they offered to pay like an enormous amount of money. You could look it up, like
Yeah.
3 years worth of revenue or something.
Right.
So it went from not being a sale for sale to being for sale, right? Because it was just too much money. He just couldn't say no, and everybody was on board like really quick. The people that
Yeah.
would have to go work for Sun Hydraulics, everybody was like, boom. And Frank Murphy's like, yeah, go sell it. I'll take care of everybody. No, nobody will have to worry about it. So we sold it to Sun Hydraulics, and they couldn't monkey with the business for 27 months. That was the deal. So we just ran the business. It was
Hmm.
fine.
Okay.
And had to do with an earnout. And, if they could change it, then it wouldn't matter, right? So at around the 24-month mark, they're like, hey, we're going to change this business dramatically. And I was thinking, yeah, I don't want to be part of what they're going to make it into. Just wasn't my thing anymore. So I told them I was going to leave, and they told me I had to give 6 months notice, which I did. It was in my contract, 6 months notice. And I couldn't tell anybody that I was leaving. So like the next day, I mean, you've given notice somewhere, right? I mean,
Yeah. I
you're
mean,
like,
was there
okay.
any type of succession plan, like that someone was going to inherit your role and they were going to shadow you for these
Well,
six months?
they wanted to dissolve. There was two groups that went with the sale. They wanted to dissolve it and make it one group. I
Okay.
mean, that's
All
very
right.
standard. If the business is centralized, you bring a new CEO and they decentralize it. And if it's
Yeah.
decentralized, you bring a new CEO and they centralize it, right?
Yeah.
So they wanted me to stick around for some transition plan. So 3 months in, um, I could start telling people because I don't know, was just like, hey, I don't want to be making these command decisions. There was command decisions that had to be made that were going to impact us for years.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was
That
like,
were not
I've
going to
already given
impact you.
notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like somebody else has to make some of these decisions because they could impact us, right, wrong, or indifferent. And as part of that, I told Bob Murphy, Mercal, largest distributor for Innovation Controls, that I was leaving. And he's like, oh, well, just come work for me. And I said, no. And he's like, oh, okay. So then the next day he calls me. He's like, hey, I was really serious. Like, you should come work for me. And I was like, oh, I was really serious. I don't want to work. Like, I think you're great. And I think Merkel's got a huge brand and reputation. It's been wonderful. But I don't want to live in LA. I don't want to travel to LA. I don't want to be like California based. I got kids here in Tulsa. They're all in high school. Just not doing any of that. So he's like, well, don't do that. Don't come out here. Don't travel out here. Like, just help us grow this business. And so I joined as business development for Mercal, and there was some problems we uncovered pretty quick. They're 60-year-old
When was
company,
this, Jim? What?
2018,
Okay.
2018. And there was some legacy issues. They hadn't been profitable in a long time. They had a great brand regionally. They had some of their own products that were pretty good, and they had some skills as far as like they had the products, they knew how the products worked. And then over the next couple of years, Innovation started changing their distributor network. So a lot of the distributors, the new ones, didn't have that knowledge that Mercal did have.
Yeah.
So, and then a lot of the new distributors are really smart, so they don't stock because that's a waste of your money. But that also is great for Mercal because we're not that smart and we do stock. And so we want to make sure we have the inventory for the customers. So that's been good. And then we've really been growing a solutions business at Mercal, which had a solutions business, but it was clunky. It didn't work right. They had sold a part of the solutions business to Murphy in 2008, and they hadn't really gotten their legs under them again to get going. And so the business development job, once COVID hit, turned into being general manager because I didn't have to be there anyways. So I've been
Yeah.
GM of the business for about 6 years at this point, and we're really trying to be a systems integrator. We do operate coast to coast at this point. We have territory for like Innovation, FW Murphy that
Yeah.
keeps us on the West Coast there, but a lot of our solutions, wire harnesses, control panels, we're targeting engine distributors and working coast to coast on that stuff, a little bit of Canada, a little bit of Mexico, but mainly US based. And we're growing this solutions business. So we've doubled the size of the business and we've added some complementary lines that help fill out these other lines that we have. And we're really trying to be the systems integrator and distributor you want to work with, not necessarily the biggest or the best,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know if you've ever bought from Crutchfield. Have you ever bought a
Oh
radio?
yeah. Yeah.
Yes. I,
Home stereo place. Yeah. Or stereo. Yeah. Sure have.
I want to try to be like the Crutchfield in the industrial space. And if you don't know what that means, I bought a radio for my '07 Impala. I bought an Apple CarPlay radio. And I went to put it in. Well, first off, they're like, it's not plug and play. Do you want a wire harness to make it plug and play? Yes. How much is that? $40. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. So they made me like this crazy jumper harness that I couldn't make for $40.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
It would
And
cost you.
it would
So
cost me $40 to make it. And if Mercal, who has a wire harness shop, would cost me 250
yeah.
bucks. Right. And I'm talking if I made them all the time, right? I mean, just the labor, all that, right? And so they gave me this plug and play harness. And then it was a Sunday, and I called because I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't do certain things or where to plug certain things in. And somebody from tech support picks up and they're like, oh, yeah, what do you got? Okay. Yeah, what car? Oh, yeah, sure. And they walk you through everything. Get on the video call with you. You need to plug that there. And it's Sunday afternoon, right? And I mean, I paid, I don't know, 450 bucks for this radio. So what's
Right.
Crutch?
Yeah.
100 bucks, right? I mean, it's like there's no real money there. So that's what I want to try to emulate that at Mercal for the industrial space. And we're doing that on the back of a lot of growth and a lot of opportunity and trying to serve those markets. So that's really like the long-term vision. We try to focus on companies that make 50 to 100 or something a year. It's a really good niche for us. They
Yeah.
can't get attention from other people. Um, and we try to avoid there's some low end type controls on the market. And it's like if customers want to use that, that's fine. I had a guy call me this morning and we walked through like a generator control solution. Then he mentioned this other company that he thought was using the same engine and was using generator controls. And I was like, well, call them, see what they're using.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, we like working with you. I'm like, yeah, but if I'm $1,000 more, go work with them. I mean, it's fine. We're trying to be the right people to work with when it works.
We have that same sort of philosophy with the Summer Energy Technologies business, is not falling into that commodity trap, that to do things a little differently, like the custom solutions. And I mean, I think there's a couple of things I want to talk about is, you know, briefly we talked about your education, and I think it's just really important for uh, young people and their parents to understand that. Okay, so you went to school to be an agriculture mechanic, and I'm not blowing smoke. You are now an internationally known, highly reputable business executive, and that yeah, it's really up to the individual where you go. And there's nothing at all wrong with. I think it's great that there's people going uh, and working on ag equipment every day. That's keeping
Amen.
the country fed and but yeah, just that no one should ever feel pigeonholed into any one thing. I think is really important.
Well, and way back when I was a mechanic at Caterpillar, I started working on a business degree part-time,
Yep.
and I do have an MBA, but I would tell you it took me 15 years to get that MBA. And I don't mean
Yeah.
like I wandered away for a few years. No, 15 years to get all the classes, to a semester to get an MBA. And
Yep.
work helped pay for it along the way and everything else. But I started as a mechanic, and then I just saw that the people that had the jobs that were kind of where I wanted to go had MBAs. And
Yeah.
you know what that meant to me? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. I just
Yeah.
knew people had that. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna go get an MBA,
Yeah.
and it was like, I didn't grow up in that house. I was the first guy in my entire family to go to college. It was just, it's not how it worked.
Yeah. Well, we covered a lot of ground and it's a great story. So, Jim, some people interested in connecting with you for business, how do they find you on
Hunt
LinkedIn?
me down on LinkedIn, Jim Saunders on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with people. Love to talk about mechanical stuff.
All right, Jim. Well, hey, thanks for joining us, and we'll be talking soon about business and bike riding, I'm sure.
I love it.
All right,
Thank you.
have a good one.
Appreciate you having me on.